I just got back from attending my 30th high school reunion in Connecticut, and I want to talk about all the feelings and the anticipation that comes up around a high school reunion. So it's weird because reunions bring up so many different emotions and feelings from high school, and they remind you of what has changed, but also what remains the same. I believe the foundation of who we are gets built in those early years of life, growing up, going to school, being around your friends, and just learning about who you are and just coming into your personality, into your character. And I feel like you're fundamentally who you are at your core from the time that you are maybe around the age of like, I think from 0 to 7 is when you are developing your personality and your character. When we look at who we are in high school and we fast forward to who we are now, we can see a lot of the similarities in that. What I mean by that is if you're a kind and considerate person now, chances are you were that way back then too. But the same applies if you were a shitty person. So if you were mean and obnoxious back in the day, you probably are the same way. It's not to say that people can't change or they won't change for the better, but most people aren't willing to take accountability for their actions and their behavior. Change takes a concerted effort. It takes intention. You have to really look at yourself and say, okay, I don't want to be this person anymore. Or if you want to do things for the better or be better, it has to be a conscious choice. So I'm going to share my perspective on the reunion and all the things that happened. And if you're on the fence about attending yours, or if you have one that's coming up, or if you're thinking about going or not going, maybe something I share here will help you decide if that's the right choice for you. So before I start, go ahead and grab your reflections worksheet so you can jot down any notes from today's conversation. Click on the link in the description to download it. So, first thing I want to do is share a few things about my high school class that I think are rare and unique. So, shout out to the NHS class of 1995. You know who you are. Number one, I think is rare is that we are a close, tight knit class, meaning everyone knows each other in some capacity or some form. I'm connected to a lot of my classmates on Facebook. So, like any high school experience, there are different groups and cliques of people. We already know this. And we had all different types of friend groups. So, depending on the group that you were a part of, you had like your core group of friends, but then you also had your other friend groups. For example, some of us were in the band. I played the violin, so I was in the orchestra. And you may have had friends from sports like football or basketball, field hockey. I played on the volleyball team, so I knew people from volleyball. And obviously, when you're on a team, you have people from all different grade levels. But I'm just talking about for my class, right? The senior class of 1995. We also had different levels of classes, when I was in high school. At the time, I believe they were called Stay Nines. And I was in Stay 9-8. I had a lot of advanced classes and a lot of AP classes. And I knew people from there too. Even if they weren't a part of my core friend group, they were people that I interacted with and I attended a lot of classes with. So you pretty much went to class in your group, whichever Stay 9 you were in. Those are the people you mostly attended class with. But in general, there was a level of respect for people outside of your circle or your core friend group. And everyone just knew each other. Even if you didn't hang out with that person, you knew of them, they knew of you. It was that kind of thing. You had like your ride or dies and the people you just, hung with all the time. And then there are people that you knew, but you just didn't really hang out with, if that makes sense. And what I noticed at the reunion is that after saying hi to everyone, the same group you typically flocked to or attracted back then seemed to be the same crew of people you hung out with on that night, give or take. That's just something I noticed that was happening on that night of the reunion. The other rarity I find that's unique about our class is that our town or our little city of Norwalk was diverse. So I'm talking about all cultures, all races, all backgrounds, white, black, Hispanic and Latino, Italian, Greek, Caribbean, Asian. Everybody was in my class. There was somebody who represented some background in my class. Like everybody was different. So this is, I think, unique because as I've moved to different places and I've traveled to different parts of the country, this is not the case. People are not as diverse. Cities are not as diverse. The people you go to school with, there's not a mix of people. And even if you have these different groups or if you see different types of people, there's no mixing and interacting with people who are different from you. And my class mixes and mingles in all ways. We had interracial relationships, different friendships and friend groups, even if you had your core group of people, right? So obviously, like attracts like. So, yes, there are going to be groups of people like the whites would hang with whites, black hang with blacks, that sort of thing. But in general, people mixed. It wasn't like you couldn't talk to other people or you didn't interact with other people. There was a lot of interaction and just diversity. And I think that at the time we probably couldn't appreciate that, or at least for me, I didn't recognize that that wasn't normal. To me, it was always normal growing up having all different cultures, races, religions around. And when I got to college, that was definitely not the case. And even though I've lived in some other major cities like DC and Atlanta, I would say that yes, it's very diverse. There's lots of different cultures, backgrounds, people. But one thing I notice is that not all people are mixing and mingling. It's just a very interesting thing. But I feel like that's unique. I just feel like that is something about our class that not everybody can relate to. The third thing that's unique is that we have a reunion every 5 years. So I know that this is rare because I've heard that other high schools don't necessarily do this, or other people that I know, they don't have reunions or they haven't been to any reunions since they've graduated from high school. And I also heard that the other high school that's in our town, we had our 30th reunion on the same night that they had theirs, and that was their first one. So they hadn't had one in 30 years since they'd graduated. We have one every 5 years, give or take. There was one year maybe we skipped, but even in COVID, during, I think it was like 2020, I believe we had one, and that was on Zoom. So even during COVID, we still got together. That's rare. And I also know a lot of adults who had reunions, but they've told me, or like friends who have had reunions, and they've told me that they were like, I'm not going to my reunion. Or they knew that they had ones coming up, but they just didn't want to attend. I think the reason our class has been so good at having reunions every 5 years or planning it is because of our class officers at the time. From what I understand, when you graduate from high school, whoever your class officers are, I think they are responsible or in charge of organizing your class reunions. Because in the beginning, our class officers were doing it. We've since had different committee members. So this past reunion, the 30th year reunion, were different people. They were not part of the class officers, but the committee members that planned this most recent one did an amazing job putting it together. So I just want to do a shout out to the 30th year reunion planning committee. Thank you guys so much for planning everything and all the details and all the level of commitment that you put into that, because it was a lot of fun. Okay, now that I've talked about just some of the things I think are rare about my class, I want to now get into some of the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions that came up during the reunion for me. A few of the people that I spoke to right when I got to the event, they told me that they were a little bit nervous about going. And I'm not going to lie, I felt the same way too. So 30 years is a long time. Lots of life happens in 30 years. I hadn't seen some of my classmates since the day we graduated from high school. That's a long time. Imagine the last time I saw them was the day that we had our graduation, walking across the stage, taking pictures. And I remember my graduation. I remember being outside, like in the courtyard and everything like that. So I remember that. But that's the last time I saw some of these people. And I was mostly excited to see everyone. I really was. I was looking forward to it. It was more of a happy, exciting, like anticipation. But as the day and the time got closer, I felt a little anxious. And I thought about why. So I think there are a few reasons. Number one, it's the anticipation of not knowing what to expect. It's like you haven't seen these people in so long. You're a little bit nervous, right? Like there's stuff that came up or happened in high school. So there's that. But it's the anticipation of not knowing. I mean, it's been 30 years and we don't look like we did in high school, right? So things change. People are different, especially like physically, you look different. And I think there was some nervousness around that. Of course, we all want to look our best. We all want to put our best foot forward. And life be lifing. And 48 does not look the same as 18. So it would make sense that people would feel a little bit nervous about just how they looked and like their appearance. And I was trying to figure out what to wear. I feel like everybody was trying to figure out what to wear. That brought a little bit of anxiety too, just not knowing. And I knew it was more of a casual type of place, but I just ended up wearing what I wanted to wear. I wanted to be a little dressier than jeans. I didn't want to wear jeans and just like a regular thing that I would normally wear in a regular day. I wanted to look a little bit nicer than that. Not too much over the top, but I went with what was comfortable for me. So my advice is to wear what you want to wear and what you feel comfortable with. So regardless of what everybody else is doing, you got to do what feels good to you. So I wanted to be a little dressier than, jeans and that sort of thing. So I wore a black jumpsuit. I was comfortable in that. Another reason why people felt a little nervous is because, where you are right now and what you're doing in your life versus where you want to be or where you thought you'd be, I think that brings up a lot of feelings for people. For example, by this time in my life, I thought I'd be married with kids. I thought I'd have like a really good job, probably like working a corporate job. And I just thought my life would look completely different than what it does right now. And that's not the case. I'm not married. I'm actually divorced. I don't have any kids, not living the life I thought I live. I actually have a business coaching. I never thought I'd be coaching. I'm also doing personal development training. I'm just doing a lot of different things that I never envisioned my life doing. And so not just as far as work, but just the things and the places or where you thought you'd be in your life. And maybe some people felt like they weren't exactly where they wanted to be, or maybe they were feeling a little bit insecure, just feeling strange about that. Maybe not knowing what types of conversations were going to come up, or maybe not being ready for what people would ask them. I think that was a part of the nervousness too. And I would imagine that some people felt like so much has changed since high school from who they were then to where they are now. For example, if you were the star athlete or if you were very popular in school, I would just imagine that maybe there was this pressure or expectation around you to like show up as that same person. That doesn't apply to me because nobody was checking for me like that in high school. So I guess that's a good thing. I don't feel like I was on people's radar like that. But I think that if you were, like I said, more popular, if you knew a lot of people, like you have a certain image. And then if you're not that, I mean, obviously we're not who we were in high school from that perspective. And I think that could bring a lot of nervousness or just anticipation around what to expect. And lastly, I would say this one of the other things that I think may have brought up some nervousness for people is that relationships have changed or faded away over the years. For example, if there are people that you were really close with back in high school, or maybe that you hung out with, some of those people aren't friends anymore. There have been breakups and fallouts. Some of those were from way back in high school and some way later as we became adults. But yeah, I would imagine that not seeing a person that you haven't talked to in 30 years, or, if you had a friendship breakup and now you're going to this reunion, you may see this person. I would think that that would bring up some feelings and some thoughts too. And I know for me, there were certain people that I was very much anticipating seeing. I did feel nervous about it, but I also wanted to see them. These are just things that came up for me. So I'm just imagining that this came up from other people too. We didn't get into a lot of detail about why they were nervous or what the anxiety was about, but I just can imagine there's like a whole bunch of different feelings that came up. Those are some of the ones that I thought about for me. Now that we've talked about the things that I think are rare and why I think some people were nervous, including myself, let's talk about what surprised me about the reunion. Because I know a lot of you don't know my high school class. Okay. So I'm not going to go into a lot of the details about the people because it just doesn't make sense. But I do think some of this information is applicable to everyone. If you've gone to a reunion, if you're thinking about going to a reunion, if you've never attended a reunion, if you have had opportunities to, but you've just backed out, I think there are common themes or reasons why this would happen. So let's talk about what surprised me about the reunion. Number one, I didn't have a lot of conversations about what people did for work. I didn't ask people what they did or what their jobs were. I think it came up like maybe once or twice. And it only came up because I was asking about something that maybe I saw on Facebook or, a post that they may have made. Because if you're paying attention or like you're all connected on Facebook and people are posting pictures or things, you kind of keep up loosely with people's lives. But I've not had conversations about it. And I noticed that when I had the opportunity to talk to people, I really didn't ask them a lot about what they did or what their jobs were. A lot of the conversation was just about who they were, what was going on in their lives at that time. You do like an overall catch up. I wasn't really concerned or interested in the work that they did, which I find very interesting because when I think about the 5-year reunion, I feel like we spent a lot more time talking about that. And it could be because we just graduated from high school. And that was like right around the time where we would have also been graduated from college for those people who went to college. That was more relevant then. But this time it was more life stuff. I found out people had been like married, divorced, some people had kids, some people more recently had kids. So that was more of interest to me than what people did. And I just noticed that it didn't come up. And I noticed that nobody really asked me about that either. It could be because a few people had mentioned that they'd seen my videos that I had posted online or they listened to my podcast. But I just found it interesting that I didn't spend a lot of time talking about what people did for work. It was just nice to catch up. And I really don't know if I had a lot of deep conversations to begin with. It was just more of a fun, just saying hello. A lot of it was just like a hello, and we kind of moved on. I feel like everybody was working the room, trying to get around the room. Another thing that surprised me was past insecurities coming to the surface. There was a point when someone responded to a comment that I made, and it reminded me of who this person was and how this person used to be back in the day and still is. And this person wasn't my cup of tea to begin with. We weren't on the same vibe. And in that moment, I had to decide if I was going to engage and invest in the conversation, which was more like a conflict or like an argument, like a debate, which I wasn't trying to debate. I wasn't here for debate. This is just not the time or the place for that. So I had to decide if I was going to go there or if I was just going to let it go. I chose to let it go because I thought to myself, this person adds zero value to my life. They were never someone I respected to begin with, and I have not engaged or interacted with them in like over 30 years. So I'm good on that. And a part of what was coming up was the fact that whatever I said seemed to be a trigger. And it was an example of their insecurities. That was their thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm not about to go down this path with you because it's just not worth my time, my energy, or my intellectual capacity. That was their insecurities. But for me, there were some insecurities that came up just being in that space and in that environment. So I will share this. The people closest to me know this, but I've never really shared it outside of my close circle of friends or family. But I didn't always feel accepted or embraced by some of the Black girls and guys that I went to school with. Not all of them, but some. I wasn't the it girl. I wasn't part of the popular crew or the in crowd. I wasn't at the parties. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I really wasn't the girl that guys check for. I remember I went to the prom with a guy that was a family member of a close friend to my mom. And I know there were like spring dances and junior prom and all these other things. Nobody ever asked me to go. So I didn't go to any of those. I know I went to the senior prom, but that was it. So I was considered more of what you would call like square. I was just very square. I was just minding my business. I was very studious. I was in the 8 to 9 classes. So I was always doing homework. I always had practice or something I had to do. I just wasn't it. So I didn't necessarily get teased in high school. I don't remember getting teased, but when you're not it, right? When you're just not it. You can tell when someone rock with you and when they don't. So I was very aware of who just weren't feeling me and who was. And I would just say overall, I was kind, I was helpful, I was passionate, even as a young teenager. I was always nice to everyone. I really didn't bother anybody. I didn't cause drama. I wasn't getting into fights and stuff like that. I just wasn't about that. But I think all those things make me a good coach now. I didn't have any idea that I was going to be a coach or me being that way would kind of lead to where I am right now. Those things, if I really look back, all the qualities and the characteristics of who I was and what I was doing, I don't think I was everybody's cup of tea and vice versa. But seeing certain people brought back those memories. And I was like, man, high school for me, it was a mixed bag. It was a little bit of good, but there were some awkward moments in there for me. There were some awkward times. And when you feel slighted by someone or something someone says or does, and it impacts you, or whether it's positive or negative, you remember those things, even if it was 30 years ago. And so I just remember that when I was in that room and I saw certain people, I was like, yeah, I remember. And some of those memories were very good memories. And some of them were like, yeah, I'm good over here. I don't need to reminisce. That's something that I also noticed or that surprised me. I wasn't really expecting to feel a certain type of way or to remember certain things, but I did. So that's something I just wanted to point out. Another thing I noticed is that I didn't really talk to people very long. I guess in my mind, I thought I was going to have these long conversations or to go deep with people, and I really didn't. And I like to go deep. I like to have deep conversations, but it wasn't the time. It wasn't the place for that. It wasn't the environment for that. I feel like the conversations were short to the point, and then I moved on to the next person. I sort of work the room a little bit. And then I would come back around to some people and like have longer conversations. I didn't talk to people as long as I thought I'd talk to them. And I also didn't feel like I needed to get to the bottom of certain things. I feel like there are certain people that I probably will talk to more now that we've reconnected. But I don't know, like, what will change after this. I'm not sure if anything will change or if it will pretty much just remain the same. I think there will be some people that I will see again at the next reunion if they choose to go, but I'm not sure if I will remain connected to them in that way. Like I said, a lot of us are connected via Facebook, or maybe we share mutual connections, mutual friends, and that's how we keep in touch with each other. But I just thought I would come away with more like, "Oh, I know this about this person. I know that about that person." And I do have a little bit of that. But some of the conversations, I don't even remember what I said or like what we talked about. Overall, I think it was a great time. And it was really nice seeing everyone. The planning committee did a really great job organizing and getting the word out to bring people together. I know that at this reunion, there were a lot more people that I think have been in the past. So it was really nice catching up, seeing everyone. And one of the reasons I wanted to go to this particular reunion is number one, 30 years is a really, 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 really long time. A lot of life happens in 30 years. And I just wanted to make sure that I was able to connect with people, say hello, just check in, see how people were doing. Because, not all of us are going to be here going forward. I know that there were a few people from my class that have since passed away, and they did tributes to those people or just acknowledging them. And I think that was very, very sweet. I really like how that turned out. But that in itself just made me recognize and realize that tomorrow's not promised, today's not promised. And so you have the opportunity to connect with people you should. And like, regardless of all the things that have happened, maybe somebody said to you, did to you, it's like morality is real. We're not immortal. We're not all going to be here forever. And I just think it's nice to connect with the people that you grew up with and just kind of go back to your roots. Every time I go to Connecticut, if I feel nostalgic, every time I go to Norwalk, I feel nostalgic. I know that there are a lot of things that have changed. Norwalk is not the same. The way that it was when I grew up is very different from the way it is now. A lot of the people that I went to school with don't even live there anymore. But it's just nice to be in an environment to remember where you came from, no matter how far you go, to always remember where you came from and to always remember where home is. So that's something that was really important to me. My 30th high school reunion was a good example of seeing how much has changed, but also what still remains the same. So there's certain characteristics or qualities about a person that never change. I feel like if you've been this person your whole life, you're probably still the same person, right? The core of who you are doesn't ever really change. I think your circumstances can change. I think the maturity level can change you. I think life experiences can change you. But the core of who you are, I feel like remains constant and consistent. There are certain people that I saw, and when I look at their lives now, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. I believe that they're doing the things that they would have been doing, or I see them in that same light. And then there's some people who have surprised me too. They're doing things that are completely out of, what I would consider something that they would do, but in a positive and a good way. I just think that it's nice to always go back to your roots, always reflect on where you came from, what it is, and just to see how far you've come. Again, change is the only constant in life. A lot of things change, but also characteristics, qualities, the core of who you are pretty much remains the same. So if you are hesitant to attend your class reunion, or if you are thinking about it, or if there's an opportunity to go and you're kind of like on the fence, maybe, I would just say to remember these things, right? Everyone else is just as nervous as you are about it. People have the same anxiety, the same feelings about seeing people that they haven't seen in decades. So just know that you're not alone in that. But just be yourself. Wear what you want to wear. Show up as who you are today. Don't worry about what you were doing in high school or how you were in high school, but just be who you are now. Because here's the thing, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You have nothing to prove. All you have to do is show up and be who you are. But I would just say, if you ever have the opportunity to go back to reminisce and just to see kind of how far you've come and where you come from, I would absolutely encourage you to do it. But again, it has to be your choice. It has to feel good to you, make sense for you. And I know that Not everybody's class is the same. I know that not everyone's experience is the same. And some people had a really hard time in school. Some people, high school was not the best years of their life. People always like, oh, high schools are the best years of your life. They were not the best years of my life. I've had way better years than just high school, but I know that it brings up a lot of mixed feelings and a lot of mixed emotions. Like I said, it's up to you. Do what's best for you, but tomorrow's not promised. So now I want to hear from you. Have you recently attended a high school reunion? What was your experience like? What thoughts or feelings came up for you? I'd love to hear your perspective. So leave a comment and share your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one.